This story is about the ghost camp at Midnight Lake. The fictional Midnight Lake, set deep in the Appalachian Mountains, USA, surrounded by jagged cliffs and black pines. A forgotten hiking trail leads there, known only to locals who avoid it. Nearby lies the village of Ashwick Hollow, a place that looks stuck in time. Wooden houses, crooked fences, and villagers who whisper warnings. The main characters are of the story. Arinder Vane, a quiet literature student, obsessed with folklore and myths. Kaelin Dross, the bold one, always challenging superstition and seeking thrills. Mira Solane, the empathetic soul, sensitive to energy and atmospheres. Tovik Renner, a jokester, never takes anything seriously until it's too late. Salora Minth, an art student, constantly sketching what she sees. Draven Korik, the skeptic, analytical, studies physics and scoffs at ghost stories. Isolde Fair, a music major, quiet but with a haunting voice, often humming at night. The story begins in the late afternoon. The 7 friends are crammed into 2 dusty jeeps, winding up an old mountain road. The sun dips lower, shadows crawling across the cliffs. When they reach Ashwick Hollow, they stop at a creaky gas station. The old attendant with milky white eyes refuses to fill their tank until they answer one question. "You kids, you ain't going up to the lake, are ya?" Arinder, curious, asks why. The man spits tobacco into a rusted can, his voice dropping. At midnight, the lake remembers the dead, and it don't let go of the living. The group laughs, brushing it off as mountain superstition. Tovik even mocks the man's accent, making everyone chuckle nervously. But Mira feels a sharp coldness crawl over her skin the moment the word midnight is spoken. They drive on. The road narrows to a dirt track, twisting higher into the mountains. Pines grow thicker, leaning as if trying to keep them out. Ravens follow overhead, their caws sharp and echoing. Finally, they arrive. Midnight Lake lies before them, a mirror of pale blue water, surrounded by cliffs so steep it looks like the sky itself has been trapped inside. Its beauty steals their breath, but the beauty hides something. The air is too still. No crickets, no birdsong, just silence. They set up camp by the shore. Salora begins sketching the lake, remarking how the surface almost looks alive, shifting in colors. Isolde hums softly, her voice floating strangely far across the water. As night begins to fall, Kaelin gathers wood for a fire. Draven scoffs at the villagers' warnings, joking. At midnight, the lake remembers the dead? Please, the only thing to remember is to bring marshmallows. The group laughs again, but Mira stares out at the water. She swears she sees a ripple, though no stone was thrown, no fish jumped. It's only dusk. The real nightmare hasn't begun yet. The camera of Salora's phone accidentally records something none of them notice. Behind them, across the lake, a faint outline of a campfire flickers in the mist. No one else is there. The first evening, the fire crackles high as night settles in, painting the trees with orange light. Shadows stretch unnaturally long, bending across the campsite like reaching arms. Kaelin, ever the bold one, pulls out a Bluetooth speaker and starts blasting music. The sound feels wrong in the dead stillness, like something alien pushed into the mountain silence. Mira begs him to lower it. "It doesn't belong here," she whispers, shivering though the fire is warm. Arinder quietly agrees, scribbling notes in his small leather journal. He's fascinated by the lore. The villagers spoke in riddles, but all folklore has roots. This place that feels like a wound. Tovik laughs, raising a beer. "Cheers to the wound, then. May it never heal." They drink, laugh, and try to drown their unease. But Mira keeps glancing at the water. She swears she sees movement in the fog that drifts low along the far shore. After dinner, Salora goes wandering near the tree-line with Isolde. The moon glows weakly above, struggling to pierce the mist. Just beyond the pines, they stumble upon something. Rotting canvas, torn sleeping bags, and rusted cooking pots scattered in the dirt. It's an old campsite, half consumed by the forest. Salora kneels, running her fingers over a collapsed tent pole. This hasn't been touched in years. Isolde picks up a kettle, blackened with soot. She drops it when she notices dried brown stains inside, clinging like rust, but too dark, too thick. They return to the group, pale and shaken, dragging the evidence with them. Draven, the skeptic, inspects the gear under flashlight. Probably just hikers who packed in a hurry. Irinder shakes his head. Then why leave everything behind? Silence. The question lingers. Later, as the fire dies low, Isolde hums softly, an old folk tune her grandmother used to sing. Her voice carries strangely far, bouncing across the still lake. And then, another voice hums back. It echoes from across the water, perfectly mirroring her song. The group freezes. Isolde stops instantly. The second voice stops too. Draven insists it's just echo, but Mira grabs his arm, trembling. Echoes don't answer. Around midnight, when the group finally crawls into their tents, the temperature drops hard. Breath fogs the air. The mist thickens, crawling in from the water. Kalen wakes to the sound of children laughing, faint, playful, drifting across the lake. He unzips his tent and steps out. The lake is still, black as glass. No one is there, and yet the laughter continues, circling him, weaving through the fog. Suddenly, a splash. Something ripples violently in the center of the lake. Kalen shines his flashlight, but the beam only pierces mist. Then, just for an instant, he sees it. A pale hand rising from the water before sinking silently below. He stumbles back, heart pounding, but when the others emerge groggily from their tents, nothing stirs. The laughter is gone. Draven mocks him. You drink too much, man. You're spooking yourself. But Kalen doesn't argue, because deep inside, he knows what he saw. As everyone tries to settle again, Irinder notices something strange. Across the water, faint pinpricks of light glow in the fog. At first, he thinks they're lanterns, but they float too smoothly, too evenly spaced. He calls the others, and they gather at the shore, watching in silence as the lights drift closer. Isolde whispers, voice shaking. It looks like another camp. Salora raises her camera to zoom in. Through the lens, the group sees silhouettes moving around the phantom fires. Shapes of people walking, sitting, laughing. A campfire. Tents. Figures. A perfect reflection of life. Except no sound, no smoke, no footprints. And then, one of the silhouettes turns its head directly toward them. Salora drops the camera. The 7 students gather nervously around the fire, all staring at the impossible lights drifting across the lake. Kalen mutters, trying to steady himself. Must be campers. Has to be. Just across the shore. But Mira shakes her head violently. No, there's no trail there. No way in. The fire sputters, crackling as if it too senses the weight in the air. The mist grows so dense that the trilene blurs, leaving them in a world of smoke and shadow. The glowing orbs hover closer, lantern-like, yet wrong. Their light doesn't flicker like flame. It pulses, breathing like living things. The students clutch each other as silhouettes emerge. Figures gather at phantom fires, black shapes bending, moving, some sitting on logs, others swaying as if caught in an eternal song. Irinder whispers, voice tight. They're mirroring us. Indeed, the figures' movements are eerily similar. One crouches by a fire, another raises something to its lips as though drinking. Every action feels like a delayed echo of their own. Salora, trembling, lifts her sketchbook. She begins drawing almost without thinking. Her pencil scratches furiously as the phantom shapes shift and twist. When she finally looks down, her drawing doesn't show shadows at all. It shows burned faces, hollow eyes, bodies half-drowned. Her hand freezes. The figures she drew are staring back at her from the page. Then the laughter returns. But this time it's not children, it's familiar voices. Mira freezes. eyes widening as she hears her father's voice. Her father, who drowned years ago. "Mira, come here, my little star. Come closer to the water." She stumbles forward, eyes glassy. The others grab her, pulling her back, but she screams. "He's there. He's calling me." At the same moment, Isolde hears something else, her own voice. Her humming, soft, sweet, floating back across the lake, but warped, dragged underwater, like a melody sung by someone drowning. Draven shakes her violently, breaking the trance. His skepticism falters, eyes darting. It's tricks. Just tricks. Yet his voice cracks. Kalen, still shaken from seeing the hand in the water earlier, suddenly feels his feet wet. He looks down. Though he hasn't moved from the fire, his shoes are soaked. Mud clings to his ankles. Drops of water trickle down his skin. And then he hears it. His mother's voice. "Kalen, you've been gone so long. Come home. The water's warm. Come home to me." The mist parts for him. He sees a pale shape in the water, waist deep. Arms stretched toward him. It's her, his mother, smiling, dripping. Kalen staggers forward before Draven and Tove grab him, wrestling him back. But as they pull, Kalen screams. She's real. She's right there. When they glance back, the woman is gone. Only ripples remain. The campfire suddenly gutters. The flames stretch unnaturally tall, then vanish in an instant, leaving only smoke. Darkness collapses around them. The lantern lights across the lake glow brighter, as though feeding on their fear. And then, another fire appears, across the shore, where the ghostly figures gather. Their fire now burns higher than any real flame, casting long skeletal shadows that stretch across the water, stretching toward the students' feet. The phantom camp is no longer just watching. It's inviting. They huddle in their tents, too terrified to speak. Every sound, the crack of branches, the drip of water, the whisper of wind, feels alive, stalking them. Outside, faint footsteps crunch in the leaves. One by one, slow, deliberate. They come closer, closer, stopping just outside the tents. The group holds their breath, frozen. The footsteps cease. And then, a voice whispers from inches away, low and wet, dripping with lake water. "You're already part of us." Morning comes, gray and heavy, as though the sun refuses to fully rise over Midnight Lake. The students don't speak much while they eat a half-hearted breakfast. Draven insists again it was echoes, tricks, fog. His rational voice is thin, brittle, as though convincing himself more than anyone else. But Mira won't look at him. She just stares at the water, her hands trembling. Solora's sketchbook lies closed beside her, but she keeps glancing at it as if it might move on its own. By afternoon, Kalen grows restless. His pride refuses to let fear win. We're letting shadows spook us. I say we row across the lake, see for ourselves. Mira pleads with him not to. You don't understand if you go to it. You'll never come back. But Kalen smirks, masking his fear with bravado. Draven sides with him, desperate for logic to return. If we prove nothing's there, maybe you'll all calm down. Against Myra's protests, the group agrees to cross after nightfall. As evening bleeds into night, the fog drapes itself over the water like a burial shroud. The students drag an old aluminum rowboat they found abandoned near the treeline. It groans under their weight, as though warning them to turn back. They paddle out. The water is unnaturally still. No ripples, no splash, no sound. Just the faint drip of oars and their quickening breath. Halfway across, Isolde whispers, horrified. The stars, they aren't reflecting. They look down. She's right. The lake mirrors their faces, their boat, their firelight, but not the sky above. Instead, the water shows only shifting, pale shapes writhing beneath the surface. As they near the opposite side, the ghostly camp comes into terrifying clarity. A fire burns high, though its smoke rises downward, sinking into the soil instead of the air. Figures cluster around the flames, blurry, indistinct, yet human enough to make the student's stomachs twist. One sits sharpening a blade, though the sound is wet and metallic. Another rocks in place, humming in a voice too warped to be real. Two others sway together, hands linked like broken puppets. Kalen tries to speak, but his throat locks. Suddenly, the figures shift, and the students freeze. The shapes by the fire resemble them. 7 figures, 7 students. But wrong. Irinda's double stares with hollow eyes, its chest caved in, as if crushed. Salora's twin drips black ink from her mouth, her fingers twitching as if sketching in the air. Isolde's reflection hums with split lips, throat bulging as though filled with water. Myra's shadow self shivers violently, skin torn where hands had dragged her down. Kalen's double gurgles and coughs up water endlessly, eyes wide with terror. Tovik's phantom laughs soundlessly, jaw unhinged too wide, flapping like broken glass. Draven's counterpart has no mouth at all, just smooth skin stretched tight where his lips should be. The 7 phantoms sit around their fire, watching, waiting. The ghostly Kalen raises its hand, beckoning. The others mimic, one by one, all 7 doubles stretching their arms in unison. The students tremble in silence, transfixed. The mist curls tighter, dragging them closer. Isolde suddenly clutches her head and screams. Her voice splits into 2, her own and a second one, warped, echoing. "They're not copies," she gasps, collapsing into Myra's arms. "They're us. Waiting. Already us." The boat rocks violently as something brushes against its underside. A thud, then another. Hands. Hands are pushing the boat toward shore. Kalen snaps from his trance and grabs the oars. He rows wildly, screaming for the others to paddle. Shapes rise in the water, pale faces just below the surface, staring upward with bloated eyes. The hands claw at the boat, scraping metal. Mira cries out, clutching Isolde. Salora drops her sketchbook into the water, only for it to vanish instantly, sucked downward by unseen weight. Finally, the boat breaks free. The water calms, releasing them. They collapse onto the original shore, gasping, shivering, soaked in cold sweat. But when they glance back, the ghostly camp remains. 7 twisted doubles, still watching, still waiting. They sit huddled around their fire, no one speaking for hours. The only sound is the lake, soft, slow waves lapping against the shore, though no wind stirs. Finally, Draven breaks the silence. His voice is hoarse, trembling though he tries to sound calm. Hallucinations. That's all it is. Shared hysteria. Fog, cold air, sleep deprivation. Nothing more. But no one answers him, because they know what they saw. The ghost camp across the water still glows, its 7 figures locked in eternal mockery. Salora, unable to sit still, walks to the shoreline with her flashlight. She kneels, staring at her reflection, but the reflection doesn't mimic her movements. It just smiles. She gasps, stumbling backward. Her reflection leans closer, lips parting, dark water spilling from its mouth. Her own drowned eyes glare up at her, whispering. Soon, she screams. The others rush to her, but when they look, the water is calm. Only her pale, normal face stares back. Later, as the group tries to sleep, a melody drifts through the trees. A lullaby. Soft, sweet, familiar. Isolde bolts upright. That's my grandmother's song. She used to sing that to me. But her grandmother had died years ago. The group listens in horror as the song grows louder, echoing from all sides, though no one sings. Isolde begins humming along unconsciously. Mira slaps her, snapping her out of the trance. But the humming continues, from inside Isolde's own chest, vibrating through her ribs. Past midnight, Kalen vanishes. They find him standing barefoot at the shoreline, eyes open but blank, dripping wet. His lips move soundlessly, mouthing words only the lake hears. Irinda slaps him awake. Kalen gasps, looking around wildly. His feet are bleeding, shredded by stones. When asked why he went to the water, Kalen whispers, "She was calling me. She said she missed me. I had to go." No one asks who she was. They already know. Irinder can't sleep. While pacing the tree lane, his foot catches on buried canvas. He digs it out, an old, moldy rucksack. Inside, wrapped in rotting cloth, he finds a leather-bound journal. Pages water-stained, ink faded but legible. It belonged to Thomas Halloway, a mountaineer in 1964. The entries grow frantic near the end. The lake sings to us now. My wife swears she hears our daughter's laughter. We see fires across the water every night. They beckon, but none return. The villagers warned us. They said at midnight, the lake remembers the dead, and it remembers us now. The final entry is smeared with mud and blood. If anyone finds this, leave. Do not look across the water. Do not listen to the voices. The campfire is not yours. Midnight Lake does not let go. The group is shaken. Tovik, usually the clown, tries to lighten the mood. He forces a laugh, clapping Kalen on the back. "Come on, it's just a spooky story. We'll be fine." But the laugh doesn't stop. Even when he closes his mouth, the sound continues, high-pitched, endless, echoing through the trees. Everyone stares in terror as Tovik claws at his throat, his laughter pouring from somewhere else, filling the woods. Finally, it cuts off. His body convulses, and he collapses, sobbing in silence. But the sound of his laughter still hangs in the mist, circling them like a predator. Drawn by terror, they look once more across the lake. The ghost camp is closer now. Much closer. The doubles no longer sit still. They're standing at the water's edge, hands outstretched, grinning, broken, dripping. And though no wind stirs, the ghost fire across the lake flares violently, shooting sparks into the fog. Each spark hisses out, only to reappear at the students' own feet. The ghost fire is bleeding into theirs. The night was unbearably quiet, suffocating even. Aisha could hear only the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hall. Yet, every tick seemed slower than the last, as though time itself resisted moving forward. She tried to sleep, but the strange metallic odor lingered in the air, keeping her awake. Suddenly, a faint scratching sound echoed from the hallway. It wasn't the creak of wood, nor the whisper of wind. This was deliberate, slow dragging. Summoning her courage, she crept out of bed. The corridor was drenched in shadows, the dim lamp flickering as if it was losing the strength to fight against the dark. When she reached the wall near her father's old study, her breath froze. There were words, freshly written in something thick and dark, smeared across the peeling wallpaper. "Welcome home." The letters dripped, forming crimson trails that slowly crawled toward the floor. Aisha's hands trembled. She reached forward, hesitant, and touched the substance. It was still warm blood. Her heart slammed in her chest as a voice whispered right behind her ear, "You shouldn't have come back." She spun around, no one. The hallway stretched empty. Yet she felt eyes digging into her skin. Then the study door creaked open by itself. A chill swept out, and for a moment, Aisha swore she saw the outline of a tall, shadowy figure lurking inside, its head tilted unnaturally, as though curious, waiting for her to enter. Her legs weakened, but something, curiosity, dread, or maybe the house itself, pulled her forward. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut with a thunderous bang, and the sound of scratching began again. Only this time, it came from inside the walls. The scratching grew louder, closer, like claws raking at the plaster from within. Aisha pressed herself against the desk, her breathing shallow, eyes darting across the dimly lit study. The shadows in the corners seemed to pulse, as if alive, feeding on her terror. Suddenly, the wallpaper bulged outward, stretching as though something beneath it struggled to break free. She stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The bulge rippled, moving along the wall, following her. With every second, The scratching deepened into guttural scrapes, like fingernails tearing wood. Then, cracks split the plaster. A single, pale hand too thin, its nails jagged and black, slid out, clawing at the air. Another hand followed, forcing the wall apart. From the darkness inside, a face emerged, eyeless, skin gray and peeling, mouth wide and grinning as if it had waited for this moment for years. Aisha screamed, but the sound died in her throat. The figure dragged itself halfway through the wall, whispering in a voice that was both hers and her father's at once. "We never left, Aisha. We've been waiting for you." The blood on the walls began to bubble, letters melting into grotesque shapes, forming new words. Join US. Suddenly, the desk lamp flickered violently, and in that brief flash, she saw not one, but dozens of hands pressing from inside the walls, all reaching, all hungry. Her legs buckled. She had two choices: open the study window and leap into the night, or stay, and let the house consume her like it had consumed the rest. The scratching turned into a deafening chorus, the walls alive with writhing figures, and the window began to shut on its own. Aisha lunged for the window, her heart thundering so loud she could barely hear the howls inside the walls. She grabbed the frame and tried to shove it open, but the wood resisted as though something invisible pressed back. Her palms stung from the effort, nails digging into the peeling paint. The window groaned and slid open an inch. Cold night air brushed her face. Freedom so close. She shoved harder, desperate. Then the temperature dropped. The air pouring in from outside grew heavy and metallic, like the scent of blood on rust. A whisper slithered past her ear, colder than the wind. "Do you think the lake will let you leave?" The window slammed shut, nearly catching her fingers. She screamed, recoiling as the glass fogged with shapes, faces. Dozens of them. Their mouths were open wide, pressed against the glass as if drowning on the other side. Their eyes rolled back, their features half-burned, half-melted. She recognized some, snatches of the missing faces from the village's old newspaper clippings. Behind her, the walls burst outward in cracks and splinters. Hands clawed, dragging the wallpaper into shreds. But instead of grabbing her, the arms pointed toward the study door. The knob rattled violently. Aisha froze. Something was on the other side. The doorknob twisted. Click. Slowly, the door creaked open, darkness spilling into the room. And in the doorway stood one of her friends, Zyron. His shirt was soaked, clinging to him as if he'd just climbed out of the lake. His eyes were clouded white, lips blue. Water dripped onto the floor in steady drops. "Aisha." His voice was a rasp hollow, yet filled with an almost pleading sadness. "We need you at the campfire." Behind him, down the hallway, faint orange light flickered, the glow of fire. She could hear faint laughter, the same haunting echo from the lake. The ghost camp had followed them into the house. Aisha staggered back, her legs trembling. Zyron stood in the doorway, water pooling at his feet, spreading in black, oily rivulets across the wooden floorboards. The flickering orange glow behind him swelled, and with it came the unmistakable crackle of firewood. But the air smelled wrong. Smoky, yes, but tainted with rot, like burning flesh. "Come," Zyron whispered again, tilting his head unnaturally to one side. His jaw seemed too loose, as though barely hinged. "They're waiting for you." Against her will, her body moved a step forward. It was as if the house itself was pulling her. The walls seemed to breathe, inhaling and exhaling with her every motion. Shadows stretched like hands across the ceiling, guiding her toward the door. She tried to resist, digging her nails into the desk as she passed it. But a sudden shriek from the walls made her flinch and let go. The hallway opened before her, impossibly longer than it should have been. At the far end, the fire burned, circles of light and shadow forming the outline of a campfire, complete with figures huddled around it. They sat in silence, backs hunched, staring into the flames. Zyron led her closer, each step squelching with the sound of water. When they reached the end of the hall, Aisha saw them clearly. The figures around the phantom campfire were her friends, Uriel, Caliph, Davin, Silas, Vera, and Nixon. But they weren't them. Their skins were blistered, their faces bloated as if drowned. Their eyes were vacant, milky white. Yet every so often, their heads would snap toward her, twitching at odd angles, as though strings held them upright. Calith's corpse-like double grinned wide, the corners of her lips splitting open. Vera's mirrored form rocked back and forth, humming a broken lullaby. Nixon's face looked like it had been pressed into the mud and left there, teeth full of soil. Aisha's breath came in short, panicked gasps. Then the fire flared high, almost reaching the ceiling. Inside the flames, she saw visions, not only her friends' deaths, but her own. Her reflection screaming as water filled her lungs, her body dragged into the lake's dark depths. The phantoms all spoke at once, their voices overlapping into a guttural chant. The lake remembers the dead. The lake remembers you. The floor beneath her cracked, water seeping upward through the boards. She realized in horror, the campfire wasn't just inside the house. The house itself was sinking, transforming into a reflection of the lakeshore. And the only way out was straight through the circle of her drowned friends. Aisha froze, the circle of drowned friends forming a complete ring around the phantom fire. The flames roared, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced on the warped walls. The heat burned her skin, but the smoke smelled like decay, thick and choking. Zyron stepped closer, his pale, with hand reaching toward her. "It's easier if you just join us." Her instinct screamed run, but her feet were rooted, as if the floor itself had turned to quicksand. The water from the lake that now seeped through the boards licked at her ankles, climbing higher with each heartbeat. The drowned doubles around the fire began to chant, voices overlapping in a bone-chilling chorus. Join, become, stay forever. Aisha realized then what the lake had been waiting for all along. Not just the lake itself, but this phantom recreation. Each victim was lured by the voices of the dead they loved, drawn in to replace those who had already vanished. She turned her gaze to Zyron. His eyes, cloudy and white, held no recognition, no humanity. But for a split second, she thought she saw a flicker of fear. Or was it hunger? She didn't have time to think. The floor beneath her cracked further. Water surged upward, soaking her knees, then her waist. The reflections of the drowned camp stretched across the boards like broken mirrors. A hand, slimy, cold, bloated, shot up from the floor and clamped onto her ankle. She screamed, kicking violently. More hands followed, fingers dragging along her arms, legs, pulling. The circle tightened. The fire's glow seemed to stretch the phantoms, making them taller, more twisted, their mouths opening impossibly wide. A voice whispered in her ear, soft and familiar, the kind that made her stomach twist. "You've been chosen, Aisha. The lake remembers you now." A final surge of will forced her to lunge forward. She crashed through the circle, shoving past the bloated hands, feeling her body scrape along the damp, rotten floor. The phantom camp shrieked, a chorus of voices blending into a single, deafening wail. As she slammed into the hallway, the fire's heat burned her skin, and the drowned faces of her friends reached toward her from the walls, their arms stretching impossibly far. She realized, too late, that running didn't mean escaping. The water continued to rise, the house itself beginning to mimic the lake's shore, swallowing doors, walls, and floorboards in a tide of black, viscous liquid. And somewhere in the distance, a familiar laugh echoed, not from the house, not from Zyron. The lake, waiting for its next victim, was calling her name. Aisha stumbled down the warped hallway, water now lapping at her knees. The walls moaned with every step, as if the house itself were alive, breathing, stretching, trying to consume her entirely. Then she heard it, the lake calling her name. "Aisha, come to me." The voice was soft, melodic, impossible to ignore. It was both soothing and horrifying, like the memory of someone she loved and lost, twisted into something monstrous. Her heart pounded, legs moving before her mind could catch up. The hallway opened into the main room, but the walls had vanished. In their place stretched the shoreline of Midnight Lake, mist rising from the black water, lantern lights bobbing eerily across its surface. The phantom camp sat just beyond the shore, silhouettes frozen in their twisted forms. Aisha realized with a jolt. She had left the house, yet the lake had brought the house with her. The world around her had become the reflection of Midnight Lake itself. The water surged toward her. It licked at her ankles, knees, thighs, rising unnaturally fast. The surface shimmered, showing visions of her own death, her reflection drowning slowly, eyes wide with terror, her mouth opening in a silent scream. From the water, a pale figure emerged, a woman with drowned hair and hollow eyes. She was beautiful, familiar, and utterly terrifying. "I've been waiting for you," the figure whispered. "You belong to the lake now." Aisha froze. She recognized the face. It was her own reflection, twisted by water and death, smiling with lips she knew were hers but weren't. Every lantern on the lake pulsed, illuminating new reflections of herself. Dozens of Aishas emerged from the water, each one more broken than the last. One had eyes sewn shut with black thread. Another's skin was blistered and peeling, dripping water. A third crawled toward her on hands and knees, mouth opening wider than humanly possible, whispering, "Join us." The real Aisha screamed, stumbling backward into the water. Yet the water didn't drown her. It lifted her, pulling her toward the center of the lake. From the opposite shore, the drowned figures of her friends raised their arms, chanting, "The lake remembers the dead. The lake remembers you." Every echo, every whisper, every movement felt deliberate. The lake wasn't just haunted. It was alive, hungry, and patient. Aisha's mind raced. Fight or surrender. Every instinct screamed to resist, but the water called to her deepest fears and regrets, showing her images of everything she had lost and loved, twisted, broken, and waiting beneath the surface. Suddenly, a hand, cold, wet, familiar, grabbed her wrist. Zyron's drowned double, or maybe the real Zyron trapped inside the water, stared at her with eyes full of both terror and pleading. "Aisha, you have to leave, or join us forever." The mist thickened, swallowing the shore. Lanterns floated closer. The phantom camp mirrored across the waves, and the whispers intensified. The lake itself was alive, shaping the world around her, drawing her inescapably closer. She realized there was no normal escape. The lake had claimed her as it claimed all who stayed past midnight. And somewhere in the distance, the first screams of the night rose again, the echoes of those who had vanished before her, repeating the cycle eternally. Aisha's legs sank deeper into the black water. Each step toward the center felt like wading through thick, icy tar, pulling her down, refusing to let go. The lake wasn't just water, it was alive, undulating like a massive, breathing creature. Every ripple a hand reaching for her. The phantom camp across the shore began to move. The fires blazed higher, shadows stretching unnaturally. Her friends' twisted doubles rose from the water, walking effortlessly across the surface, pale faces grinning, mouths opening impossibly wide. They approached, step by step, as though the water were solid ground. Aisha screamed. The echoes of her own voice multiplied in the mist, morphing into the screams of all those who had vanished at Midnight Lake before. Join us, the chorus whispered, carried on the wind. The water rippled violently. Aisha's reflection stared back at her, but it wasn't her own. This version was burned, bloated, and eyes empty voids. Her reflection reached out of the water with a hand that looked wet and slimy, dragging herself toward Aisha's feet. Then another reflection appeared. Her friends, their drowned eyes begging for release. Yet they were twisted, broken, their mouths whispering impossible things. You belong here. Forever. The lake remembers the dead. A surge of panic overtook her. She tried to run, but the water became a mirror, reflecting 100 impossible versions of herself. Each one was already dead, already trapped, already part of the eternal ghost camp. The water rose to her waist, then her chest. Her lungs burned, but the lake did not let her drown. Instead, it pulled her deeper, stretching the world around her. The shoreline, the trees, even the stars above became reflections of the ghost camp. She looked up. Her friends' bodies were walking across the water, their pale, dripping hands reaching toward her. Zyron's double-lunged. Aisha flailed, catching his wrist, but it was like grabbing smoke. His hand passed through hers and clutched her shoulder from inside, cold, heavy, unyielding. Aisha, join forever, he rasped. The lake's mist enveloped her. The firelight from the phantom camp refracted in the fog, creating multiple copies of the same twisted circle. Each reflection pulled at her, screaming, whispering, clawing. Pain exploded through her body as the lake claimed her. She felt her limbs twist, elongate, her chest tighten as water filled her lungs. But she was not dying. She was changing. The reflection in the water smiled at her. Her eyes became empty, her skin pale, her lips cracked and blackened. A voice, louder than all others, echoed in her mind. You are ours. The lake remembers you. You will return every midnight, trapped in the circle, beckoning the next. She screamed, but it was too late. Her body sank fully beneath the surface. The ripples smoothed, leaving only the calm, black water of Midnight Lake. Across the shore, the ghost camp burned faintly, shadows swaying. The cycle continued. By morning, the lake appeared serene. No screams, no movement, only the reflection of the mountains, perfectly still. Her tent lay empty on the shore. Shoes, backpacks, and a single abandoned journal were scattered across the wet grass. No sign of the students remained, except for one. In the water, a faint shimmer, a pale, sunken figure, barely visible beneath the surface. Waiting, and somewhere deep in the mist, the faintest whisper floated on the wind. At midnight, the lake remembers the dead. The curse remained. The ghost camp awaited its next victims. Weeks later, the valley below Midnight Lake remained silent. Villagers whispered warnings to strangers, but none dared approach the water after sunset. Yet curiosity and bravado draw the foolish, and that night, a new group of campers arrived. 7 strangers, young and adventurous, carried tents, backpacks, and smartphones. They laughed as they set up near the shore, dismissing the local warnings as old superstitions. It's just a lake, said one, smirking. Spirits, ghosts. I mean, really? Said another. The fog began rolling in as the sun dipped behind the mountains. The water gleamed like black glass, reflecting only their faces, not the sky. By nightfall, strange sound began to echo across the lake. Faint whispers, almost indistinguishable from the wind. The laughing of children, though no children were present. Footsteps on the shoreline, crunching leaves, but the ground remained undisturbed. One camper, Leora, noticed something odd. Across the lake, through the mist, she saw a faint glow, a circle of lanterns. Look, someone's already here, she said excitedly. Her friends laughed nervously, thinking it was a trick of the fog. But the lanterns moved closer, without boats, without anyone rowing. As the new campers approached their tents, the glow of the ghost camp sharpened. The lake's surface rippled unnaturally, and faint silhouettes appeared. 7 figures, eerily similar to their own group. One camper, Yarrick, noticed the faces first. They were pale, waterlogged, smiling grotesquely. Are those us? He whispered, stepping back. The ghost camp mirrored their movements. When the campers reached for their backpacks, the doubles did the same. When they raised a hand, the doubles raised theirs in perfect synchronization, smiles widening, mouths twisting impossibly. By midnight, The temperature dropped. A thick fog swallowed the tents. Leora, unable to sleep, wandered to the lake's edge. She heard a familiar voice, calling her name, soft and melodic, beckoning. "Leora, come to me." Her heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her feet moved on their own. The water licked her ankles, and the mist pulled her forward. Across the lake, the ghostly campfire burned, shadows stretching unnaturally. Before her friends could react, Leora's double emerged from the water, eyes vacant, mouth splitting into a wide grin. "Join, join!" The water surged, dragging her in. Her scream echoed across the lake, swallowed instantly by the mist. The remaining campers screamed, trying to grab her, but their hands passed through her body. Her double had already taken her place in the circle of the damned. From the shore, the other doubles began to rise from the water, walking effortlessly across its surface toward the tents. Lanterns floated behind them, guiding them, illuminating twisted, drowned smiles. The cycle had begun again. Midnight Lake had claimed new victims, ensuring the curse persisted. The new campers huddled around their fire, trembling. The fog clung to them like a living thing, and the lake's surface shimmered unnaturally under the dim moonlight. The first whispers began, faint, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable. Each camper heard something different, something that preyed on their deepest fears. Jarek's gaze fell on the lake. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, but then he saw his own face staring back, pale, waterlogged, eyes wide and lifeless. The reflection grinned, then mouthed words. "You'll never leave." Jarek stumbled backward. Every time he blinked, the reflection grew closer, climbing out of the water, hands reaching for him. He ran, but the reflection mirrored every step, never missing a beat, always one step ahead. Leora, recovering from being dragged into the water, was now trapped in a hallucination, or something worse. She heard her mother's voice calling from the mist. "Leora, come home." It was soft, inviting. She fell to her knees, reaching into the fog. The voice became louder, more insistent, yet twisted. It now echoed hundreds of voices, all calling her name, overlapping into a horrifying chorus. When she finally stood, the fog had formed shapes, her family's drowned faces, grinning grotesquely. They beckoned her toward the lake. Kalen was frozen near the tents, staring as a twisted version of himself emerged from the forest line. His double's face was cracked, burned, and eyes hollow. "You will stay forever," it hissed. The double advanced silently, moving in impossible ways, skipping across the fog, climbing over trees like they were stairs. Kalen tried to run, but the forest seemed endless, reshaping itself with every step. Paths twisted back toward the lake, pulling him inexorably closer. Silvara, trying to keep the group together, suddenly noticed the campfire behaving oddly. Flames danced higher, forming shapes of screaming faces, some familiar, some unknown. The fire whispered, "You will feed us, you will burn with us." The shadows leapt from the fire, hands of smoke and flame grabbing at her. Her screams joined the chorus, her friends' cries fading behind the walls of mist. The water surged higher, licking at their tents, soaking gear and boots. Lanterns floated closer, casting pale light on the twisted doubles advancing across the lake's surface. It became clear. The ghost camp was no longer just a reflection. It was alive, reshaping reality, choosing who would live and who would join the lake's eternal nightmare. The new campers realized the horrifying truth. The lake's curse adapts. Each victim is haunted in a uniquely personalized way, designed to break their mind and drag them into the circle of the damned. The fog closed in. Screams echoed across the mountains. Lanterns bobbed closer. Shadows twisted around the campers like living chains. And Midnight Lake waited patiently, as it had for decades, for the next victim to falter. By now, the new campers were terrified beyond comprehension. The fog thickened, the water rose, and the lantern-lit figures of their doubles crept ever closer. But one camper, Kalen, refused to give in. "We can't let it take us," he shouted, voice trembling. "There has to be a way to fight back." The others were frozen, paralyzed by fear, but Kalen ran to the edge of the shore, clutching a journal he had found in the ruins of an abandoned tent. The pages were water-stained and frayed, but the handwriting was familiar from the old stories. Instructions, warnings, rituals. The record of those who had survived long enough to document the lake's curse. Kalen turned toward the water. His double mirrored him perfectly, pale, burned, smiling with teeth jagged like broken glass. The air shimmered as if the reflection were trying to escape the water and replace him entirely. "You can't defeat me," hissed the double. "You will join us as we join you." Kalen slammed the journal onto the ground. Words glowed faintly on the pages, forming a circle of protection. He read aloud, voice shaking but determined. "By the light of fire, by the depth of water, by the memory of life, I will not be claimed tonight." The lake roared as if enraged. Waves sloshed violently, and the fog twisted into human shapes, screaming and clawing toward him. But the glowing circle held. His double recoiled, writhing like a creature trapped between worlds. The lake was patient, ancient, and cruel. It responded, sending a massive surge of water crashing toward the shore. Tent poles bent, lanterns were swept away, and the remaining campers were knocked to the ground. Kalen's circle held, but barely. Shadows from the ghost camp outside the water twisted and stretched, forming monstrous shapes that climbed out of the lake. They were drowned friends, grotesque doubles, all moving with terrifying purpose. The voice of the lake boomed in his mind. "Fighting only delays the inevitable. The dead remember you, and so shall you." Despite the protection, one of the shadows leapt through the barrier, landing on the shore. It was Leora's double, now completely transformed into a drowned, bloated creature. She screamed, her voice unnatural, echoing as if several voices spoke at once. Kalen tried to push her back into the water, but her strength was unnatural and human. She advanced relentlessly, each step leaving black water in her wake. "Join us," she hissed, eyes hollow. The other campers finally snapped from terror. They grabbed makeshift weapons, sticks, rocks, and even a broken lantern. Together, they tried to shove the doubles back into the lake. But each time a figure fell, two more rose. Kalen realized the truth. The lake cannot be defeated with force alone. It is not a creature. It is a memory, a curse, collector of souls. Physical resistance only delays the inevitable. The only hope was to outsmart it, to avoid the traps of reflection, fear, and desire that it used to lure victims. But how? As he looked across the water, the phantom campfires burned brighter than ever. Shadows of the drowned sat around the fires, turning their hollow eyes toward him, waiting. Kalen whispered to himself, "If we survive, we need to remember what it is and how it works." But the lake was already preparing its next move. Kalen gathered the remaining campers, Yarek, Silvara, and Vera, into a tight circle. Their faces were pale, eyes wide, hearts hammering in panic. The lake churned around them, sending waves lapping unnaturally at their feet. Lantern-lit shadows twisting across the water like claws. "We need to trick it," Kalen whispered. "It feeds on fear, desire, memories. If we show nothing, it can't take us." The others stared at him. Silvara shivered. "How do we not feel fear?" she asked. Kalen opened the journal and pointed to a passage barely legible in water-stained ink. To survive the lake, one must give nothing of the self, refuse the reflections, deny the voice, walk past the fire without looking. The lake responded immediately. Shadows began to rise from the water, the doubles of their friends, twisted and grotesque. Leora's drowned form emerged, eyes empty, mouth smiling. But Kalen whispered to the group, "Do not look at them. Walk slowly past the shore. Ignore everything." The water licked their ankles. Ghostly hands reached from the lake, yet they kept their gaze forward, refusing to react. The doubles wailed and screamed, their faces twisting in frustration. The fog thickened, trying to disorient them. The lake was clever. It didn't just send doubles anymore. It warped the world around them. Trees appeared upside down. The shore stretched endlessly. Lanterns floated impossibly close. Voices called from behind, from above, even inside their own heads. Kalen, come back, it's safe. Your friends are already gone, join them. Each camper had to fight mental illusions, suppressing every instinct to look, to react, to fear. One misstep, and the lake would seize them. The phantom campfires now formed a complete circle across the lake. Flames twisted into faces of the dead, mouths moving as if speaking, beckoning the campers to come closer. Kalen held the journal high, chanting the instructions aloud. The words glowed faintly, forming a protective aura around their group. The shadows screeched and lunged, but could not break the circle. Keep walking. Don't stop. Don't react to them. Kalen shouted, voice cracking. They moved forward, water rising higher, soaking their clothes and pulling at their feet. The fog attempted to make them see things, trees becoming limbs, lanterns becoming eyes. But they kept their focus on the faint moonlight above, the only anchor to reality. The lake, furious that its prey resisted, summoned something new. From the center of the water, a massive shadow emerged, a twisted amalgamation of drowned bodies, limbs entwined, faces screaming in silence. It moved as one, rippling across the surface, a living nightmare of all who had been claimed before. The campers froze for a moment. Kalen held his ground, whispering the words from the journal. The shadow paused, hesitant, almost as if testing them. We can survive this, Kalen muttered under his breath. We have to. The first time the lake truly understood that its victims could resist, and the battle of mind versus ancient supernatural hunger began. The massive shadow in the lake paused, water rippling like black silk. It was as if the lake itself was assessing their courage. The campers, Kalen, Yarek, Silvara, and Vera, stood shoulder to shoulder, hearts hammering, lungs burning, but refusing to falter. Kalen raised the journal. The faint glow of the protective circle pulsed brighter with each word he read aloud. By light, by fire, by memory untouched, we claim ourselves tonight. The shadow recoiled slightly. Waves splashed violently against the shore, knocking Silvara to her knees. She scrambled up, gripping Kalen's arm. It's not just trying to drown us. It's trying to break our minds, she shouted. The lake retaliated with personalized horrors, far worse than before. Yarek saw his own body floating in the lake, eyes staring blankly at him, limbs twisted unnaturally. His reflection mouthed the words, "You are next." Silvara felt invisible hands press into her chest, clawing at her clothes, at her skin. Yet no one was there. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum, amplifying the terror. Vera's voice was mimicked by the water, distorted and cruel. "Vera, come back to us. The lake is patient." Kalen, sensing panic rising, shouted, "Focus on us. Focus on each other. Don't let it touch your mind." From the center of the lake, the twisted amalgamation of drowned bodies surged forward. Limbs writhed like snakes, heads twisted in impossible angles, mouths opening in silent screams. The water around them glowed black, icy and thick. "Hold the circle." Kalen yelled. The campers formed a physical barrier, holding hands, chanting the journal's protective words. The glow expanded, creating a bubble of light that repelled the shadow for a moment. The lake screamed, not a sound humans could hear, but a sensation of deep, primal fear vibrated through their bones. In the distance, across the black water, Kalen spotted something strange, a faint shimmer, like the reflection of the original sunrise over the lake. It was subtle, barely visible, but it pulsed with warmth. "That's our anchor," Kalen whispered. "We need to move toward the light." The others nodded, grasping each other's hands. They stepped into the water, forcing themselves to ignore the doppelgangers, the voices, the illusions. Each step was agony, the lake's current tugging at their feet, their minds whispering fear, but they pressed forward. The shadow of the drowned writhed, sending waves and fog to block their path. Its movement was fluid, relentless, hungry, but the campers' shared focus began to weaken its influence. The lake had never encountered victims who resisted this strongly. It responded by splitting the shadows, doubling the number of drowned figures. Lanterns bobbed closer, whispering, beckoning, trying to lure them off the path. But the protective circle of the journal pulsed in sync with Kalen's voice, creating a barrier that kept their minds tethered to reality. For the first time, the campers realized the lake's power is tied to fear and surrender. If they could endure the night, they might just survive. But the lake was clever, ancient, and would not allow them to leave easily. The night had deepened into an unnatural black. The fog thickened, and the black water of Midnight Lake churned like a living beast. Lanterns bobbed on the surface, forming eerie, flickering constellations. The drowned figures rose, hundreds of them now, twisting and writhing, moving across the water like solid shadows. Kalen tightened his grip on the journal, chanting the protective incantations aloud. His voice echoed across the lake, defiant and raw, a beacon of resistance. We are here. We are alive. You do not control us. The four campers linked hands and began to wade deeper into the lake. The water pulled at their legs like hands of the dead, tugging, dragging, trying to pull them under. Shadows reached from beneath the surface, grabbing, clawing, whispering. Join us forever, the lake remembers. Every step felt like walking through ice, through tar, through the souls of the damned themselves. Reflections of their own deaths shimmered just beneath the surface, twisted faces, hollow eyes, and mouths screaming silently. Ignore them. Kalen shouted, focus on each other. The lake intensified its assault. The fog formed into phantoms of the campers' worst fears. Kalen saw his family drowning, calling for help, yet he could not move to save them. Silvara saw her own face cracked, weeping water that was not hers. Vera saw her shadow split in two, one walking toward her with claws for hands. Jarek's reflection morphed into every person he had ever wronged, eyes accusing, mouth silent yet screaming guilt. It was not just a test of survival. It was a test of sanity, courage, and willpower. One slip, and the lake would claim their minds as well as their bodies. From across the lake, the ghost camp grew larger. Fires burned brighter than ever, silhouettes of the drowned circling in rhythmic motion. Lanterns floated toward the campers, each carrying the faces of their loved ones, voices soft and seductive, beckoning them to give in. Just a little closer, we can be together. Kalen yelled, slamming the journal into the water. The pages glowed, creating a wave of light that briefly pushed the lanterns and shadows back. Keep moving. Don't look. Don't respond. The protective light pulsed, tethering their minds to reality, giving them just enough strength to continue. At last, they reached the center of the lake, the origin of the shadow. The water swirled violently around a single point. A massive figure emerged, a towering amalgamation of all the drowned, eyes hollow and endless, mouth screaming in unison. It was the lake itself made manifest, a consciousness of death and memory, waiting to pull them in completely. Kalen raised a journal, chanting the final words he could read. By the light of life, by the fire of hope, by memory unbroken, we walk free. The shadows shrieked, the water surged, and the fog twisted like a living entity. But the protective light from the journal held them steady. For the first time, the lake faltered, unsure, confronted by defiance. Far in the distance, faint sunlight shimmered on the horizon. The campers kept their eyes forward, ignoring the screams, ignoring the shadows, ignoring the reflections. Step by step, they moved toward the promised light, the first rays of dawn cutting through the fog. The lake roared one final, deafening wave, but Kalen and his friends, linked and resolute, refused to break. The first rays of dawn pierced the thick fog over Midnight Lake. The black water shimmered, reflecting a blood-red sun that made the surrounding mountains appear twisted and surreal. For hours, the campers, Kalen, Yarrick, Silvara, and Vera, had battled shadows, illusions, and drowned doubles, but now the faint light gave them hope. Almost there, keep moving. Kalen urged, voice hoarse from chanting and fear. The shadows writhed and screamed, their forms flickering as if the light burned them. Lanterns bobbed and flickered on the surface, trying to drag the campers back, whispering their deepest desires and fears. From the center of the lake, the massive amalgamation of drowned bodies, the lake itself, rose one last time, its hollow eyes locking on Kalen. Waves surged violently, tossing the campers off balance. "You cannot leave." The lake's voice echoed inside their heads, a chorus of hundreds of drowned souls. Kalen stood firm. He raised the journal high and chanted the final protective words with all his strength. A radiant pulse of light erupted, pushing the shadows back into the water. The amalgamation writhed, twisting, but the light held it at bay, preventing it from crossing into the real world. The other campers followed Kalen's lead, repeating the words, focusing every ounce of courage and willpower. Slowly, step by step, the fog lifted, and the black water began to calm. Finally, they stumbled onto solid ground, muddy, soaked, shivering, but alive. The lake behind them appeared serene, deceptively peaceful. Lanterns bobbed faintly in the distance, and the phantom campfires had vanished. We made it," Silvara whispered, collapsing to her knees. But Kalen knew better. Midnight Lake had not forgotten them. They had survived for now, but the curse lingered. Shadows in the trees seemed to watch, the distant fog twisting as if mocking them. Villagers later found the campsite. Tents were wet and torn, personal belongings scattered, footprints muddled and strange. No one saw the campers, except they were alive, shaken beyond comprehension, eyes hollow from the horrors witnessed. Over the coming weeks, the survivors experienced nightmares, flickering reflections of themselves in water, smiling grotesquely, faint whispers calling their names in empty rooms, the sensation of icy hands gripping their ankles in the dark. Kalen realized the truth. Even if you escape Midnight Lake, it never lets go completely. Those who survived carried its memory, its hunger, and its shadow. The villagers' warnings proved correct. At midnight, the lake remembers the dead. And somewhere in the mountains, a new group of campers approached the shore, unaware of the ancient, hungry curse waiting to claim them. Months later, Midnight Lake appeared serene under the pale light of a rising moon. The mountains reflected perfectly on its black, glassy surface. To any passerby, it was breathtaking, peaceful, untouched. But the lake had a memory that never slept, and its hunger had already begun to stir once more. A new group of 7 campers, filled with laughter and bravado, approached the shore. They carried backpacks, tents, and smartphones, unaware of the countless souls trapped beneath the surface. The villagers in the valley tried to warn them, do not stay overnight. The lake, it remembers the dead. The campers laughed, shrugging it off. They set up camp near the shoreline, oblivious to the black water waiting patiently. As night fell, the temperature dropped unnaturally. Mist rolled over the lake like a creeping hand. Lanterns appeared on the water, faint at first, flickering, then solidifying into the ghostly campfires of the damned. Shadows began to rise, forming twisted versions of the campers, their reflections, already drowned, already trapped, already waiting. The lake whispered, "Join us, the night is long, the dead remember." Across the water, figures moved silently. The protective light of Kalen and his friend's escape had long since faded. Midnight Lake was patient. It could wait. It would wait forever. By midnight, the first camper had wandered too close to the water. A faint hand, pale and wet, emerged from the lake, grasping and pulling. Screams echoed across the mountains, raw, terrified, swallowed immediately by the fog. The remaining campers tried to run, but the lake reshaped the shoreline, twisting it impossibly. Lanterns bobbed closer. Fires blazed faintly on the other side, and shadows of the drowned mimicked every movement. It had begun again. Far in the distance, the faint shimmer of Kalen's protective light, a memory of those who had survived, flickered and vanished. The lake had learned. It would adapt, haunt, and claim. Every scream, every drowning, became part of its growing power. And somewhere, deep within the mist, a voice echoed, repeating the curse as it had for decades. At midnight, the lake remembers the dead, and soon you will too. The campers were trapped, the cycle unbroken, and Midnight Lake waited patiently for its next victims. Its waters, dark and infinite, hid an eternity of nightmares, and the mountain around it whispered with the voices of the lost. The fog swallowed the screams. The fires blinked out, and the lake reflected only one truth. There is no escape. Not ever. The end, or just another beginning. Midnight Lake still exists. Somewhere in the mountains, waiting, watching, remembering. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror stories.